Oh, you got a nice little place here.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Several people have asked for an update on my brother. There is basically no changes, but I want to thank every one of you for your well wishes and prayers. So I figured I'd make this audio video here to let you know what is going on, and I'm going to try to go from memory as to what the doctors have told us. My brother suffered a major brain bleed on the right side of his brain. Basically, no changes have taken place. He is non-responsive on his left side. He does feel pain when he's pinched and so forth on the right side. He had to be put on a ventilator, and he also had to try to get a feeding tube down his stomach to his nose and down to the stomach. And because he's hunched over, he's been that way for years because he always slept in a fetal position for a number of years when he lived in New London. And so I guess he more or less grew that way. Similar to what my mom, when she used to have her head propped up because of her asthma, and her neck became hunched way over. I spoke to the doctor today. He could not get the feeding tube to go into his stomach because of the way his body is. Even though he was able to eat before all this happened, I questioned that. And because he's laying there and they can't get the feeding tube into him, they're forced to feed him intravenously, which he told me is not as good. But at least he gets nourishment. The long-term prognosis does not look good. He is definitely going to be paralyzed on his left side or very, very weak. He does not respond, although the doctor told me, there were several doctors I talked to, and I had one that called earlier today, and I have this one here, and this one told me that he did respond when my brother gave a thumbs up on his right hand. However, he's not speaking, his eyes are closed, and he needs the ventilator to breathe. What they told me is they're going to see how things go, and as it stands, there's basically no improvement. He is not alert, and there's a possibility, a strong possibility, that he'll probably be, they want to put a tracheotomy, I can't pronounce it, I'm sorry, cut in your throat and put the breathing apparatus in there and remove him from the respirator, because he says that could do a lot of damage on long term. And when they do that, then he has to go to a long-term care facility, which he'll have to have 24-hour care. And they have to go into his abdomen and insert a feeding tube directly into his stomach because they can't get it down the other way. We all feel, even though my brother has never had a living will, neither does my wife or myself. I never want to discuss death. It's just the way it is. We don't even have a family plot. My wife has been after me for years. Until recently, we can't, because we can't afford it now anyways, a family plot. We don't have it. I said, I don't want to discuss it. None of our family, my mother, my dad when he was alive, my sister, nor my brother or myself would ever want to talk about it. We just don't want to just change the subject. we know it's coming. Sooner or later, we'll die. So I told the doctor, I said, my brother would not want that, even though I have never discussed with my brother what he wants if something happened. I just never brought the subject up. I probably could have. I'm not one to carry on a conversation with my brother. I was, typical brother relationship, nothing special, not, he had a different life than I did. He was a book reader, and basically he didn't drive, and, in earlier years, in younger years, I mean, we used to go out, take him out, and would watch wrestling and stuff at Ocean Beach Park and stuff. Some of those videos, films that I showed you, he was there at those times. But in recent years, basically, he's by himself, and I do my thing here at home and with my family, and he was home living with my mom, and that was basically it. When my mom died in 1998, then my brother became very depressed, and I mean it is, because he was the one that found her dead on the floor in that 5-room apartment on Broad Street where I used to have my attic workshop. And, so he's been depressed since then, and being by himself in the apartment, he is, it must be tough. And, of course, he's a beer drinker. He always was from 1968. Another thing, too, is my brother has never, ever, ever been to a doctor. The last time he was there is about 1968, back in the good old days when Big Whitey, you remember the iron worker that had the oak house? He fixed Robert up with a dentist to have all his teeth taken out, on-time payments, paying the dentist directly. I don't know what it was, but it's only $15 at that time to have a tooth pulled. So I think he had 2 teeth pulled, paid him, and go walk down. It was only a few blocks on William Street in New London, which is only a few blocks from Connecticut and Broad, where he lived in New London for 49 years. My brother lived there for 49 years. That's a long time to be in an apartment. He would walk to the dentist, have 2 teeth pulled, pay him every week. And then when he had them all out, he kept this up, and he kept it, religiously. He just went there all the time. Then the dentist arranged for him to get some dentures and paid him so much a week. He was, at that time, my brother was working at Eugene O'Neill Theater for the Deaf at that time. And he knew sign language and so forth. Not 100%, but he knew a lot of it because he worked there. I think he worked as a janitor, as I recall. Now, Eugene O'Neill Theater was 7 or 8 mile walk in Waterford. Walking from the house, he would walk. He didn't drive. He took a bus sometimes at that time, or he'd walk. So he was, in good shape, But after a while, the place closed down. I think they changed it to something else, and so he had to get another job. And on Broad Street, there's a laundromat right next door, and he's working for the landlord, cleaning the machines and so forth. And that's where he was working until he retired and moved up here. I fixed him up with an apartment up here 2 miles from me. So I found him. I got lucky and found him an apartment. A low-income apartment. It looks like an older type of motel, single level, about 7 or 8 apartments, and he's in one of them. He has nice neighbors. They're poor folk, low income, very nice people. So before he moved out of the Broad Street apartment, he stopped smoking cold turkey. He's been smoking since 1968. He's been drinking beer since 1968. But he stopped cold turkey without any effects whatsoever. So he's been in that apartment now for about 5 years. I'm going to say 2015, somewhere around that area. We put him in there, and he loved it up there. The neighbors like him. He's very sociable, and he knew a lot. Although his political views just the opposite of mine. He hated Trump, and he watches the wrong news. But he's a book reader. He can tell you anything in history. He has books on former presidents. You name them, he has them hardcover books over there at the apartment, and that's another thing we got to figure out how to get rid of those. If God forbid anything happened, and it looks to me like he's going to go that way. So since he's been up in his apartment, I've never seen him drunk. He has beer in his refrigerator, although I will not pick it up for him. I'll do his shopping. I think he knows. He never had to ask, would you go get me a 6-pack of beer? I wouldn't do it. I'm against drinking. I think it's a waste. All you do is drink it and piss it out. And it just destroys your liver. That's no damn good. So, he's a different man when he was living in that apartment. Cheerful and everything. He was hunched over because he slept in a fetal position for quite a number of years. That's just the way he slept. And, he'd sleep on a couch and all curled up. So I think he just grew that way, He's 71 now, and he's been that way hunched over for a good 15, maybe more years. There was a video of him at one of my cookouts where he was not hunched over. I don't have any decent pictures of him. Really, the only pictures I have are old ones, and I may post those if I decide to make another video about him. So basically what it is now is the situation with him in the hospital. I'm his only living relative, and I have to be the decision maker. I'm not financially responsible for him. He has his own bank account, although I have access, and I write the checks out. I have access to his bank account, and I discussed them there, and they wanted to know if I want to be a conservator or a conservative or something like that. I spoke to them at the hospital about that. There's a department for that. And I'm not responsible for his bills. He has Social Security, and he has Medicare Advantage through Aetna, which is not the best plan. His rent is very reasonable. The landlord, he pays $550 a month, which includes his basic cable and his electric heat. You can't beat that. So he was able to, not a problem staying there with his Social Security every month. And so the ideal situation would be to have him go back to the apartment, And people are asking me for updates, and I have to update the people over there. There's a lady that looks in on him. Her name is Mary. She's a woman in her 60s. And she brings him a plate of stuff at Thanksgiving. She brings him a Thanksgiving dinner. I mean, we do too. And anything he wants. And she's the one that usually goes down and gets his beer at his request. But like I say, he's never drank to a point where he's drunk. I've never seen him, And every time I come there. But he's hunched over, walks slow, and he's had a bad cold for the last 2 weeks. And became very, very hoarse. So a week ago this past Tuesday was the last time I saw him. And I brought his groceries to him, and he was very hoarse and hardly can speak, but he told me at that time, I feel okay, I'm very, very hoarse. So he can hardly talk. So he got this last year too. When he's in the hospital, he ran a COVID test on him. He's negative, does not have it. He had his Moderna shots, but he did not yet get his booster because I didn't want him to be sick, because I would have to take him to Walmart to get the shot, and you have to have an appointment. Otherwise, you got to fill out all the paperwork, and that could take a half an hour or more. With my eyesight, I can't see it. And my brother, not too good at that kind of stuff. He's book smart when it comes to history, but he's never wrote out a check. I mean, we all learned how to write checks out when we were in grade school, but he's never had to, My mother, when we paid money order, and I was doing all the, doing my mom's shopping for her too in later years, and wrote her rent check out for her, and I did all that stuff, So my brother never had to do that. So he just was, when he was working, he'd always put so much money in the house to help out the bills. So, but as far as his prognosis is concerned, he is not brain dead, but in a coma. But I guess it's not 100%, but he's not responding, and what they had to do a few days ago, they had to call me at the house to put a drain. They had to drill a small hole in his skull and put a drain down through so they can drain the blood off, and something about the spinal fluid. A day later, night before last, I got a phone call at 1 a.m. Woke me up. I go to bed early. My wife was still up, and she comes on the bedroom door because she was watching TV. She can't get to sleep before 2, 3 o'clock in the morning anyways. It's the way she is. And it's at the hospital. They need your permission to do a procedure. So you don't know how, so I thought maybe he passed on or something. So each time they have to do a procedure, they have to get my okay. Because I'm the only living relative, So they wanted that drain was not working, so they had to go into the same hole and go down through and put another type in there, and it's draining a little more now with that, but they can't do anything with the feeding tube because they can't get it into his stomach because of his abdomen and everything. Everything's all crunched up because of his hunched over. He's like originally he was 5'6", but if he's 4'9", he's doing good. Because that's how bad he's hunched over. Curvature in the back and the spine and everything else because of the positions he'd lay in, and so I said, what is his chances? And it's not good. So we're talking the worst case scenario, what's going to happen, this and that. And basically, I had to tell each one I talked to, my brother, even though he's never said it, would not want to be on life support and live as a vegetable. That is not going to happen. My wife and I feel the same way about ourselves, although we have never made a living will. And they encourage us we should do that. My brother-in-law came to visit us last night, and he's a very smart man, and he's into insurance, commercial insurance, and he's college educated. I'm not, and neither is my wife. And he gave me some pointers, but I talked his ear off last night. And he says, I haven't heard you talk like that in the 40 years. Did I know him 40 years? Well, my wife and I were married 35 or 36 years. Isn't that something? I can't remember. So, it should not be a big deal. You don't need a lawyer, from what I was told, to do a living will. But it's something that, well, I wouldn't mind doing that, but when you're talking about where do you want to be buried and stuff like that, well, we can't afford a family plot now anyways, Maybe years ago we could when I was working, but not now. So we discussed this about my brother. I says, if it comes down to he's got to have a tracheotomy. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. Tracheotomy, okay, a trach, okay, we'll call it a trach. In his throat, when he gets off they have to do that. And then he gets a breathing machine that goes directly in there and goes to his lungs. And then a feeding incision in his belly to go to his stomach. That is not the way he would want to live. And I will say, sadly, my feeling is what they call pull the plug. Take them off the respirator and this and that, and, the feeding and stuff like that, and let them go naturally. We're going to have a 3-way conversation next week with the doctor, my wife, and myself to discuss that, okay? And so that's where it stands right now. I can't give you any updates. I wish I could give you a positive update. A lot of the things I don't understand, in the medical things and stuff like that. So I'm conveying stuff over to you folks out there. And all I can say is thank you very much for your prayers and well wishes. I never realized I had that many friends on YouTube. I see comments from people I never heard of before. So it really means a lot to us and to me. We're hoping for the best, but bracing for the worst. I want to thank you all for this, for listening to me and for all your well wishes. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And needless to say, it's physically impossible for me to thank every one of you. I would not live long enough to do that. So I'm doing it by way of this video. And we'll put it this way. If anything goes one way or the other, if it becomes positive, by all means, I'll give you an update. If it goes the other way and the worst happens, I'll give you an update on that too. So please give me some time. They're talking roughly about 10 days total. He's been in January 1. So they're figuring another 10 days at the very most, or maybe 2 weeks, to be on the respirator. After that, they're going to have to take him off of that and put the trach in him. And at that point, I already said no, it's not going to happen. If there's no improvement, if there is signs of improvement, even if he's paralyzed on one side or something, somebody would have to take care of him. He'd still have to be in a nursing home. And to tell you the truth, my brother can be bullheaded when it comes to that, just like my mom. My mom had to be in a nursing home until she was rehabilitated because she couldn't walk very good. Legs were very weak. And she hated it. And she was not treated very good. When she needed to go to the bathroom, my mother would not lie to me. I remember her telling me, I wanted to go to the bathroom, and the nurse just, she tried to get up and the nurse just pushed her down in bed, These are things that happen in nursing homes after the visiting hours. So my brother is bullheaded when it comes to that. I know he would not want to be in a nursing home, even though I've talked to him years ago about that when my mom was in there, and I think we discussed about going in a nursing home. It's not going to happen. But other than that, he's never expressed anything because we've never talked about it. As a family, we never talk about the dark things except for the economy and the viruses and stuff like that. But, we don't talk about what are you going to do, what's your final wishes when you're going to die. We just don't talk about it. Thank you very much, everybody. And once again, thank you so very much for your well wishes and prayers. I appreciate it. Take care, everybody.